Hi everyone, I wanted to show you how I made a little display case for my favourite crystals. So what I did first of all was I drew a rectangle in the size that I wanted the overall piece to be. It's best off to start with a rectangle because then you can gauge just how big you want your set of shelves. Then it was a case of using measurements, so like the bottom was how much was it? It's probably on the screen. If I've written it on the screen, it'll be on there. And what I did is I went 6 centimeters in from either side and drew a line, and then drew a line from 2/3 of the way up of the coffin shape, like the rectangle shape, to those marks where it was 6 centimeters in from the bottom, and that gave me the bottom shape of the coffin. And then for the top of the coffin, I went from the mark that was 2/3 up and measured in, I think I measured in about 5 centimetres from the top. Basically, it's a bit of tweaking and a bit of fiddling about to get the coffin shape right. I couldn't tell you what the angles were, I didn't measure them. I just went by going in from the top corners, bringing those in and bringing the bottom corner in. And that gave me the basic shape that I wanted. You'll probably see the odd measurement written on there, but basically measurement wise it depends what size you want to make it. And then what I did next, this is the back of the coffin shelves, by the way. I found it easier to make the back first and then worry about doing the rest of it later on, because if everything attaches to the back, it's going to make life a lot easier than me trying to cut the back and make it fit later on. Plus this will give all the shelves stability while I'm gluing them in place. If I just sort of was trying to balance them and then glue them, it wasn't going to work. So I made the back first, and then this that I'm using, by the way, is like some hardboard stuff that I've got around the house. It's like really thick compressed cardboard, and it's got a layer of canvas on one side because it is like some old canvas board that I've painted, and like they're really ancient paintings that I don't like anymore. So instead of repainting the boards, I decided to turn them into this because I wanted some sort of board that would be fairly rigid and quite strong. It did take me a bit to cut through it with my craft knife. Obviously craft knife probably wasn't the ideal tool, but I'm just working with what I've got around the house. And I found I had to go over the lines I think it was about 8 times before I nearly got through the board. And even then I had to trim the odd bit of the canvas from the surface off. As you can see, it's an old abstract painting of mine. But it's nice thick board and it's really compressed really tightly, so it's quite strong. So once I had basically cut as much as I could with the craft knife, I then found if I bent the board it would like snap, and then all I'd have to do is trim off the odd little edge from the canvas side. And then once I did that, I started working on the pieces to go around the edge of the coffin shape. And all I did was I measured the sides of the area that I was sticking the piece onto, and cut out a piece of board that was that length and then 5 centimeters deep. And then that's what I did for each section all the way around the board once I'd trimmed off all the edges. So as you can see here, I'm just trimming off the little bits of canvas, like little jagged edges, just the odd little bit where my knife hadn't quite gone through it when I was cutting it to start off with. And once I'd gone all the way around the edges, I then put 2 pieces in the middle that are 5 centimeters deep, measured to fit the correct width of where I was sticking them in the coffin for the shelves. And then all I did was I cut out, I think these are 1.5, 2 centimeter strips that I glued all the way around the edge just to finish off the edges. So instead of having like the bare cut edges of the board, I've got these nice flat edges. And then it was just a case of just cutting them to all fit with each other. So there's some slight angle cuts here. I've sort of like, it's kind of like when I had to put Coffin in on my daughter's bedroom ceiling. you have to cut certain angles so it all fit together. I'm really bad at explaining this. All it is yeah. I just cut out strips and then I kept cutting them till they fit together basically. And I got some nice neat little angle cuts and some that are slightly weird. So yeah, those strips were stuck all around the edge, as you can see, which forms that lip, which just makes it look a bit neater, and it also makes it look like the piece is a bit thicker as well, even though it didn't need to be because it was quite strong as it was. And what I did was I went around with my glue gun. Any seams in the cardboard, I glued down. I put some hot glue in and then smoothed it with the tip of the glue gun where it was hot, just to make it nice and smooth as I possibly could. And then once that had cooled down so that the glue had set, the next job is to coat the whole thing in a layer of PVA glue, then paper towel, and then another layer of PVA glue on top. This will give it the nice wood texture which I've done on other projects, and also it just finishes off, because if you can see those bare edges there, it just looks a bit rough and looks a bit naff, so I wanted to blend those in. And plus I wanted to give this like a wood texture, woodish kind of texture, kind of like how I did the haunted houses that I've been making, kind of, although I've done the texture, it's more like the how I did the texture for the altered books. So yeah, I coated the whole thing in a generous amount of PVA glue, and then separated the 2 plies of paper towel, because it's only 1 ply paper towel, it's not a lot, literally it's just a very thin covering just to make the edges look a bit neater and to add a bit of texture to it. So I didn't have to do loads of layers, because this is already really strong as it is, because the board's quite thick. Doesn't look it, but it is actually quite a solid thing. So I didn't need these layers of tissue paper and glue for strength or anything. It is just for the texture afterwards. So as you can see, I've coated that one section. I did it a section at a time all the way around, and then did all the inside, and coated the whole thing first in glue, then separated the tissue, the paper towel, and then stuck that over the top. And I stuck it as flat as I could, but obviously once you put the glue on, it does wrinkle a bit, which is fine because that's what gives it the texture. And then afterwards, I went over the whole thing in a layer of PVA glue, just to make sure that all that tissue paper was stuck down, and also to give it a nice like surface to paint on later on. And then once that layer was dry, then it was time to paint. And I did the whole thing, so I thought on the back I'd show you how I painted it. So first of all, I used my burnt umber paint, which is just some, let me see, what's the brand? It's De La Rowney Graduate Acrylics that I got. I think I got it from the range. It's a big bottle of it. And painted the whole thing in the burnt umber first of all. And because I've painted the previous painting over it a bit pink, that little bit of sort of pinky reddiness did show through the burnt umber, but it looks all right. So what I did for the whole coffin shelf unit is paint it with the burnt umber, like so. And then I did a wash of black over the top. Now obviously the rest of it, I did leave that brown layer to dry completely first, but I decided to just do it wet on wet for this, because no one's going to see the back of this board, to be fair. I just painted it just so I could show you how I did the rest of it, because I painted most of it off camera because it was going to take ages, and I didn't want to fiddle about trying to get my camera to record it, because I can only record for certain lengths of time before I start running out of memory. So I took the black and watered it down a lot and went around the edges. And basically what it is the way I did it is so there's like a bit of an inner glow in the middle of that sort of burnt umber pinky colour, which is what I got on the other side. And then around the edge is black. So it adds like it's almost like a vignette that's added around it. And obviously it looks really light at the minute, but acrylic paint does dry a shade or two darker. And I found this dried like a nice brown colour, and then just did a little wash of black over the top. Then once I had done that and was happy with it. Then it was a case of just using my heat gun just to let it dry off a bit. And then once it was dry, I turned it over to show you the next step. So the next step is to do a little bit of dry brushing. And as you can see, because I've done the brown and then I did the wash of black over the top, can you see how it's like a little bit of like a goldeny brown in the middle and then like black around the edges? I wanted that sort of effect for it, and it shows up better in the light on here. And then the next thing to do was to dry brush a little bit of white over the top just to make some of that texture stand out a bit more. So here I'm just getting all the excess paint off my brush and dabbing my brush on a paper towel as well, and then it's just a case of dry brushing over the top, and I'm trying to just pick up the textures. I don't want it to be like completely white or anything. It's literally just over the very tips of the surface just to bring out those textures in the like the paper towel, so it's like that sort of textured effect. And also it adds a bit of definition to where the shelves are and just makes things stand out a bit better, I think. And I did the exact same around the sides as well, but you want like the tiniest amount of virtually dry white paint on your brush. You don't want a lot of paint at all, because you want it to just skim the surface of those textures just to make them show up. As you can see, they stand out a lot better once it's gone over with the white. And I did that all over and then left it to dry. And once it was dry, it looked like this. And then it was just a case of hanging it on my wall. And now it's my crystal display. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.